welcome to episode 3 of Alan Drinks Whiskey and Talks About Books. I'm Alan. I have some whiskey, some Tullamore Dew today, and we're going to talk about 2 books today. You get a 2-for-1 special. A book and its sequel, Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance, both by Tomi Adeyemi. I listened to both of these books, and Children of Blood and Bone actually won Audiobook of the Year through Audible, and well-deserved as well. It was a really great listen. I was very intrigued, and pretty much as soon as I had an available credit in Audible, I got Children of Virtue and Vengeance as well, and listened to that. And so both of these books are very much in my conscience, and I've been thinking about them a lot since I finished them. Normally, if I had a Kindle version or a physical copy, I would have something annotated. I haven't really quite figured out how to annotate audiobooks yet. I know there's a way you can do like clips and stuff like that on audio, but usually when I'm listening to these, I'm driving, so I'm not really annotating. So I pulled these quotes basically from Goodreads, and that's how I'll kind of use the quotes to kind of navigate through these things. But there's a lot of things that I want to talk about with these Legends of Orisha books, I believe is what it's called. And so we'll dive right in. And the first thing that you kind of need to know about these books is that they are, at their core, about police brutality. And yes, these books are about the bringing back of magic and a fantasy land and mythical creatures and things like that, but the theme of this book is police brutality and the issues that systemic racism and oppression can have on people. One of the things that Tomi Adeyemi writes in the author's note, which he puts at the end of the book, so you've read through Children of Blood and Bone, and then you get to the author's note, and she explains a little bit about how she came about to write it. And she writes, Children of Blood and Bone was written during a time where I kept turning on the news and seeing stories of unarmed black men, women, and children being shot by the police. I felt afraid and angry and helpless, but this book was the one thing that made me feel like I could do something about it. I told myself that if just one person could read it and have their hearts or minds changed, then I would have done something meaningful against a problem that often feels so much bigger than myself. The first book especially, Children of Blood and Bone, really centers around police brutality. It takes place over a decade after an event called the Raid, which is when the monarchy basically attacked magi, people with magical gifts, killed large numbers of them, severed the connection between the magi and the gods so that magic could not be practiced. And it's this horrific event where the main character, Zaylee, watches her mother be torn away from her and hung, and that has stuck with her. And that is the thing that really drives her as she goes through this quest to bring magic back. That's at the heart of it. On the other hand, one of the other main characters is the princess Amari, who lives in a vastly different world, whereas Zaylee is poor and fights day to day to survive. Amari has everything given to her, and actually one of her servants is a magi. But after that servant, who she has become very close with, is killed by her father, basically for being a magi, Amari decides she needs to take matters into her own hands. And what I really like about Amari's story is that she is an ally in, if you might consider, people that believe in Black Lives Matter to be allies. Amari is that in the book, but she's not quite sure how to do that. She just knows that how things have been is wrong, and she wants to change it. And she's not quite sure how her privilege and her background lead her into troubles, especially with Zaylee early on, but she keeps trying, she keeps learning, and she keeps being supportive, and she keeps listening, and I think those are really important things. And so I think from this book, if you are curious about Black Lives Matter and you're curious about that, this book is a way that can kind of maybe crystallize some of those questions that you might have. And if you're wondering, how do I become an ally? This book helps you explain how. And it's a really interesting way that it does that. I think it is kind of interesting that the book, and I've kind of deemed this book to be sort of like a fantasy version of The Hate U Give. But in a way, this book helps to crystallize some of those issues or gets me to think about things in ways that a news article or a news clip doesn't. And, I think it's for a couple of reasons. One is that, these characters, I get to know them. I know their stories. I know their thoughts. I know their manners. And I know them very well because of the amazing job that the authors of these books has done. Whereas when you think about, someone like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, we don't know their stories until their stories are tragically cut short. And I think we want to know more about them, and we want to know more about their lives, and we want them to become bigger than just the news headlines. And that's where I think literature can come in, because the people in literature, the characters in literature, they serve as sort of a conduit to the real world in a way. And I hope this isn't coming off as being condescending or dismissive. It's just, these are my thoughts about the importance of literature and how literature can help us to see the lives of other people. And even if it's in a fantasy realm, we can make those connections. When I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, I came across an article titled Why Literature, published in the New Republic back in 2001 by Mario Vargas Llosa. And in that, Mario Vargas Llosa writes, "The brotherly link that literature establishes among human beings, compelling them to enter into dialogue and making them conscious of a common origin and a common goal, transcends all temporal barriers. Literature transports us into the past and links us to those who in bygone eras plotted and enjoyed and dreamed through those texts that have come down to us, texts that now allow us also to enjoy and to dream. This feeling of membership in the collective human experience across time and space is the highest achievement of culture, and nothing contributes more to its renewal in every generation than literature." And that's what I think is really important as a reader, but especially for me as a teacher, to be cognizant of the books that I put in front of my students. And I plan on getting a physical copy of Children of Blood and Bone and putting them in my classroom library and telling students, I think you should read this. It's a really good book, especially if they are interested in the protest movements that have been going on this summer and they want to know more, or they want books that touch on those subjects. I just love that, the brotherly link that literature establishes among human beings, compelling them to enter into dialogue and making them conscious of a common origin and a common goal transcends all temporal barriers. And that's the beauty of books and literature, is that through books and literature, I can understand you a little bit better. Maybe not fully, maybe not to the point where I feel comfortable, but it helps. And if I can make the effort to make sure that I read books from different points of view than my own, and if I can get my students to read books that touch on issues from points of view other than their own, that helps. That helps us grow as people. That helps us to understand where other people are coming from. So instead of saying, why are people so angry about this? Why are they taking to the streets? Why are they toppling statues? Instead of just reading a news article about it that doesn't capture it, literature that is infused with emotions and blood and sweat and tears and all of that, in a way, helps to transcend that in a way that just regular news articles doesn't. And I think that's really a really cool thing about literature. And it's one of the things that I really liked about this book, is I felt, even though it's fantasy literature, that I had a pretty good grasp on the issue, or I understood it in a way that I wouldn't have before. So, we'll dive back into the book here a little bit. One of the things that becomes really apparent early on is just how big this battle is. To get magic to come back, to help people rise up out of the lives that they have been forced to live into. And one of the things that comes up through really in the second book especially is people saying, this is not the end of a battle, that's a war that's been going on for a year, but this might be the culmination of a war that's been going on for generations. And that thread is really weaved through. And one of the ways that this war has been perpetuated, even though it's not always the military, even though it's not always campaigns, but just kind of the day-to-day struggle. This is Zayli speaking in the first book. Your people, your guards, they're nothing more than killers, rapists, and thieves. The only difference between them and criminals is the uniforms they wear. And it was almost as if that quote was plucked right out of the rhetoric that surrounds defunding the police these days. These charges that are lobbied against law enforcement, that they are actually the ones breaking the laws and not holding up a just society the way that they should. That is clearly the case in the novel. In Zayli, this is talking to Anon, really takes her to task. Anon is the prince and the heir apparent. He finds out he has magic as well, and something that makes him very uncomfortable, because he's been raised to hate magic, and so there's some self-loathing and going on there. But that quote, talking about the guards and the injustices that they have committed, is almost ripped from the headlines of today. The first book is written in 2018, and that wasn't that long ago, so it's still very fresh, but it's still also a kind of a haunting reminder of, this is still an issue, even though it seems like every summer something happens to bring this issue to the forefront, and yet nothing gets done. Which kind of leads into the next quote that I'll talk about, which is, "You crushed us to build your monarchy on the backs of our blood and bone. Your mistake wasn't keeping us alive, it was thinking we'd never fight back." And I think what we're seeing this summer is kind of the culmination of that. The years of oppression, the years of discrimination, the years of pleas for peace, for justice to be done, all those years of that falling on deaf ears. What happens? What happens when communities don't listen to their minority populations? What happens when the country doesn't listen to those populations? And I think we're seeing fighting back that's taking place. And people do question and have qualms about the way that that's been going about, but in some ways too, I also think it's a natural breaking point, if you will, on these issues. If voting doesn't change these issues, if voting doesn't get the job done, what do you do? So, it is a young adult book. Talks about young adult issues as well, and in that end, the last two quotes that I'll have here, I think really tie it together. One is, "Reality told us we would fail, but again and again we fought. We persevered, we rose." Talking about, again, this is a generations-long fight and struggle, but it's not done. And even though the odds are stacked against us, even though the odds might be stacked against us based off the institutions that serve our communities and serve our country, that doesn't mean that you stop fighting. maybe you get the victories. Maybe you see that progress that you so desperately desire and need. It is a young adult novel, as I said. It's a young adult series. And I'm a firm believer that even though young adult novels are not usually my cup of tea, that anybody can read and enjoy young adult novels. If you're an experienced reader, some of the themes, such as police brutality, are going to come out really easily to you. Whereas I think with a teenager who is kind of taking on a 500-page novel maybe for the first time, it won't. But I was thinking about kind of the lessons that these books have for younger readers as they go through them. And I think it really crystallizes with this quote from Mama Agba, who's kind of a mentor of sorts to some of the characters in the book. And she says, "You are not your mistakes. Do not let one moment define or destroy you. The gods work in mysterious ways. Have faith in their greater plan." And I think that's a really important lesson for young people, and especially young people that might be more politically active, and they want to become the change that they want to see in the world, and they want to do great things. They're probably going to make mistakes. They're probably going to have setbacks. But you don't let that define you. You let you let that wash over you. You learn from it, you rebound from it, and you continue on. And I think that's a really important lesson to have, especially when the struggle has been going on as long as it has. That there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be setbacks, but that doesn't define you as long as you keep fighting for justice. So, I cannot recommend these books enough. I was enraptured when I listened to both of them. I cannot wait for the third book in this series to come out, whenever that is. And I really appreciated that I found this book when I did, because it really resonated with me with the events that are going on this summer around the United States. So here's to the children of blood and bone and the children of virtue and vengeance. And here's to young adult literature and the lessons that they have, and here's to fighting the good fight and all of that. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. I'm having kind of fun with these. I got at least one more that I'm going to do. That'll be coming down the pipe here in a little while. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying that. So this has been episode 3 of Alan Drinks Whiskey and Talks About Books. And happy reading to you.